All right, I just wanted to go over some information on interest groups here. Here's a set of notes that we got on Google Classroom, I believe, yesterday. And just going to point out some of the major things on this page of notes before we go over the worksheet. First off, the main thing you have to get from all of this when we started talking about political parties and interest groups is that these are ways for you to have a say in government. Once we elect our leaders, really we're hands off. We said in a political party, you had a chance to build a platform and get people like you elected to office. How an interest group is different than that is you're not trying to get people elected to office. You're trying to get the people that have already been elected to do what you want. So you're trying to influence the government, not become the government. So that's a big difference. On these notes, there's a term that I don't believe they talked a lot about in the video, and that's the word lobbyist. A lobbyist is the person that works for an interest group. A lobbyist is actually in Congress, sitting in the lobby. And when Congress members come out, they ask them, hey, would you like to go have lunch? Can we have a meeting? They use their influence to get their foot in the door and have a chance to try to influence these Congress members to pass laws and other legislation that matches up with their clients, with their interest group. The way lobbyists get Congress members to do what they want is through persuasion. And the way they're able to persuade and gain influence better than an individual American. To give an example, if I went to Congress and said, hey, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, Roy Blunt, whichever one you want to pick, if I said, Josh Hawley, I'd like to meet with you about gun ownership and laws to restrict guns, Josh Hawley would say, hey, I'm really busy. I don't have time. Send me an email. I'd love to talk to Missouri voters, but I just have a lot going on. And the reason he doesn't talk to me isn't because he doesn't care, but because I'm one guy with $3 in my pocket and one vote. He just doesn't have time to sit and spend an hour with someone that does that little for him, in all honesty. But if the leader of the National Rifle Association, the NRA, walks in and says, hi, I'm Ryan Bailey, and I am a lobbyist for the NRA, and we have, 10 million members, and they've all given me dues, and we're willing to give you money to help you get reelected, and we also want to help you, we want to give you information that'll help you write a good bill that'll keep guns in Americans' hands, he's going to be willing to listen to that person. And so that's how lobbyists have so much more influence than an individual American. And it's why interest groups are so important to us, because individually, I don't have the influence to talk to Congress members and get them to listen. As a member of an interest group, I have what they need, and that is money and prestige. If you get a question on a test that says, why do interest groups have power in government? They have the money to influence candidates, to get them to listen to them so they can have money for their campaigns. And they also have the votes, the members, to say, we have the votes that can help get you elected. That's why interest groups matter in government. There's some information there about negatives and about PACs. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on the worksheet. There is one more thing here that really doesn't get talked about in the worksheet, and that's the types of interest groups. It's listed there at the top under number 3. There's 3 types of interest groups. There's economic interest groups, social action interest groups, and single issue interest groups. What they are, economic interest groups are any interest group that is going to have something to do with your job. The example listed there is the AFL-CIO. That's an auto workers union. Unions are usually economic interest groups. The teachers union I belong to, they not only work to improve teacher pay, they work to improve teachers' working conditions, they work to improve retirement for teachers. They talk to the government about making schools better, to make our job a better place to work. Economic interest groups are going to do anything possible to make your life at your job better. That's what an economic interest group is. The second type of interest group here is a social action interest group. These are usually conservative interest groups. The example there is the Moral Majority. These are groups that want to change society to mirror what they think a good society would look like. The Moral Majority is going to try to get laws passed that place Christian values in America, that The moral majority has worked before for raising the drinking age, making laws on different types of drugs more strict, trying to end make pornography illegal, gambling restrictions, things where maybe things that we would consider to be sins or vices to make them harder for Americans to use. That's what social action interest groups usually do. And the final one here is a single issue interest group. This is what most of the 100,000 interest groups in America are. They're interest groups where they just worry about one specific thing. The National Rifle Association isn't worried about your voting rights or the money you have in your pocket. They're worried about keeping guns in the hands of Americans. Whereas an economic interest group is going to try to take on all the parts that deal with your economic life. Single issue looks at one thing. National Rifle Association, guns. The National or the World Wildlife Federation, they're worried about animals. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they're worried about drunk driving laws. That's what a single issue interest group does. And now for the worksheet that was over the video that you watched. The first three questions we kind of already hit on in the notes. Number 3 just gives you a couple more examples of interest groups that are out there that maybe you've heard of before. But number 4 expands on something we had just talked about. We had said the 2 reasons why interest groups can put more pressure on politicians than an individual is because they have more money to influence them, to get them to want that money for their campaign, and also they have more votes. An interest group is more than just one person. It's a whole lot of people, and that's going to make politicians want to, get those votes. But this part of the worksheet also gives another answer that we haven't talked about. And that's the idea that interest groups gather information. They have many people working for them. They get information and give it to elected officials to help them write laws that will make these interest groups happy. The National Rifle Association has lots and lots of people working for it. They're able to get information that maybe a Congress member just doesn't have the time to get. They give them this information, help them write a good law that helps the National Rifle Association and its members, and in doing so, they get the legislation they want. Interest groups have a big hand in writing the laws that govern our nation. 5 and 6 just give some info that really we've talked about, but maybe we didn't say it specifically. Talking about making laws, that's the legislative branch. The legislative branch is the part of our government that actually makes the laws that we have to follow. And number 6, it talked about an iron triangle in the video. An iron triangle is just, the lobbyist, the Congress, and then the bureaucracy, which is the different organizations in government, groups like the FBI, the Department of Agriculture, how they work together and what they share, which is money and information. On the second page of the worksheet, number 7 just kind of gets into, you see lobbyists writing bills for Congress members more at the state level. At the national level, our congressmen do have a lot of workers, but at the state level, there's fewer. So you do see lobbyists working a lot more on state laws. Number 8, kind of we've hit on in the notes. Number 9, we've hit on in the notes. Number 10 starts to talk about PACs, which are political action committees. And what a political action committee does, and I know this question says they're not part of an interest group, but they can be. We're going to focus on the ones that kind of are. A PAC is usually a part of an interest group. Remember, interest groups are trying to influence legislation. A PAC is trying to get money to give to campaigns, to give to candidates, to get them elected. So, political parties are trying to get their people elected to office. Interest groups are trying to influence them once they're there, but they're also trying to nudge the people they want elected into that office. And they do that by giving them money through campaign donations. So a PAC is just a way that interest groups can get money to the candidates they like. A lot of the commercials that we see on TV during election season, especially right now, the flyers you find on your door, on your car windshield, a lot of times those are paid for by PACs, which belong to interest groups. Number 11 just says, how can we say interest groups are good for government? Pluralism just means you have plural of something, you have a lot of something. So if we have a lot of interest groups in government, the idea is that's good for us because they will balance each other out. There are so many interest groups working on government that none of them are going to gain so much power to control the government. So even though it might seem like some interest groups are more powerful than others, ultimately, they all balance each other out. All of them are getting the ear of the government. All of them are having a chance to help write legislation and influence bills. And so therefore, we would say they all have equal power. Number 12 gets into the idea of another positive seen on interest groups, and that's that we only have federal elections every 2 years. Every 2 years, we elect all the members of our House of Representatives, and we elect a third of our senators. And then every other of those 2-year elections, we also choose a president. By the fact that, if only every 2 years do we get to use our voice in voting, we need something in between to make our voice known in government. Joining an interest group gives you the chance to have lobbyists there pushing forward the ideas that you find important on our legislative branch. The final page of the worksheet simply just says, what are some of the negatives with interest groups? The first one is interest groups can be seen as kind of a bribe and that the wealthy have all of the power. The wealthy can join more interest groups. They can use their money to join, become members in more of them, give more money to campaign contributions through PACs. And in doing all of that, the wealthy can control government. We definitely know that's something that we see. The wealthy usually have more time because they work jobs where they get more vacation time, more time off. They don't need to work as much to pay the bills, maybe. So the wealthy have more time off to get involved in government. Maybe they've gained a better education, so they understand the concepts more, or can explain more how they feel. And so just interest groups are sometimes seen as being a way for the wealthy to gain more and more control over government. All right, that's really it on the interest group information from yesterday. What we've got for our assignment today is I've written out a summary of everything we've done under political parties and interest groups. But the problem is what I wrote out has tons and tons of inaccurate information in it. It's called a liar's essay on political parties or let me check this here. It's called a liar's essay on political dogs and cats and interest groups. Well, right there at the beginning, what you have to do is change the part that says dogs and cats to parties. You're going to read through here. You can work on this together in groups. That sometimes has helped people in the past. Read through it, cross out the parts that are wrong, make the corrections. Some of them are obviously wrong. Some of them are a little bit harder. But read through it, make your corrections, and tomorrow I will have the answer key for you to go over with the sub. Good luck. We're almost ready to take the test on this unit. See ya.